The city of Lagos is known for its noise, its restless traffic, and its endless movement. Cars honk on the streets from morning until night. People hurry past one another with shopping bags in their hands, phones pressed against their ears, minds filled with numbers, bills, and dreams. Some dream of escaping poverty, some dream of building wealth, and some, like Elena, dreamed only of survival with dignity. Elena was a young woman in her late 20s. She was not the kind of woman who turned heads immediately, but she carried a quiet strength about her. Her brown eyes often looked tired, yet behind that tiredness was determination. She had grown up in a small town in Anambra, where life was simple but hard. Her father had been a school teacher, and her mother sold food in front of their home. They were not rich, but they taught her something more valuable than gold. Never give up, no matter how heavy the storm becomes. After losing her parents early to sickness, Elena came to Lagos with only a small bag of clothes and a heart full of ambition. She worked as a waitress, saved every little naira she could, and finally, after years of sacrifice, she started a small catering business. It was not big, but it was hers. She rented a tiny shop near Balagun Market, where she sold jollof rice, beans, fried plantain, and puff-puff. Traders, Okada riders, and even some bankers came to her shop for food. They liked her smile, her soft thank you when they paid, and her way of treating even the poorest customer with respect. But success in a city like Lagos is a fragile thing. Just when Elena thought she was climbing up, life threw her down. The trouble began with Clara. Clara was a friend, or at least Elena thought so. She had met her at church. Clara was the type of woman who dressed in bright colours, wore gold earrings, and always had a phone pressed to her ear. She spoke fast, walked fast, and seemed to know everyone. To Elena, she looked like someone who had it all figured out. So, when Clara began visiting her shop often, praising her food and talking about big contracts, Elena listened with wide eyes. One day, Clara leaned across the counter and whispered, "Elena, my sister, why are you limiting yourself to this small shop? Do you know how much money you can make if you supply food for events? I can connect you." The words sank into Elena's ears like sweet honey. She had thought about it before, dreamed of cooking for weddings, offices, and parties, but she never knew how to enter that world. Clara's promises sounded like an open door. For weeks, Clara painted big pictures. She told Elena about a company that needed food for 3 days of staff training. She said all that was needed was a little mobilization fee to secure the deal. "Elena, bring 300, 0 naira, Clara urged. "Once they pay, you will get back double. Imagine the profit, my sister. Don't be afraid. This is how business people grow." Elena hesitated. 300. 0 was everything she had saved in 2 years. It was her life's sweat. But Clara's voice was smooth, convincing, and Elena wanted to believe. So she handed over the money. That was the beginning of the fall. The contract never came. Clara stopped picking calls. When Elena went to her flat, the neighbours said she had moved. Just like that, her savings disappeared. Elena tried to hold on. She borrowed some money from a cooperative to buy foodstuff and keep her shop alive. But as weeks passed, her suppliers demanded payment she couldn't make. Her landlord grew angry about her rent. She begged him for more time, but he wanted his money. Finally, one hot afternoon, while she was still cooking beans, the landlord arrived with 2 men. "Elena, time is up," he barked. "Pay your rent or leave now." "I'm begging you, sir," Elena pleaded, wiping her sweaty face. "Give me 1 more month, I'll pay." But he refused. They removed her pots, her small table, and her gas cylinder, leaving them on the roadside. Her neighbours watched in silence, some with pity, others whispering behind her back. Elena's shop, her pride, was gone. From there, things became worse. Without her shop, there was no daily income. Without income, she couldn't pay her room rent either. And just like that, her landlord gave her notice to leave. Elena packed her few clothes into a nylon bag and left the compound quietly at night. She had no relatives in Lagos, no close friends she could run to. Clara, who she thought was her friend, had vanished. For days, Elena wandered. She slept under a shed near the market at first, but the noise of traders and the danger of thieves forced her to leave. Sometimes she stayed near a bus stop, sitting on a bench until morning. But the cold was harsh, and mosquitoes attacked her. She felt herself shrinking, both in body and in spirit. Still, Elena did not want to beg. She sold sachet water on the streets, running after buses with the little energy she had. Some days, she made enough to buy bread and akara. Other days, she drank only water and went to bed hungry. There were moments when she sat on the side of the road, holding her bag close, watching life pass her by. She saw women with fine handbags, men driving big cars, children laughing in school uniforms. She wondered if God had forgotten her. One evening, after another long day of hawking water, she walked slowly through the city. The streets were growing quiet, the sky turning dark. Her legs ached. Her slippers had torn on one side. She was searching for a place to rest when she saw an abandoned building. The windows were broken, the walls covered in dust. But inside, she noticed movement. At first, she was afraid. Lagos was full of dangers, and the abandoned building could be a trap. But when she peered in, she saw a man sitting in the corner. His clothes were dirty, his hair unkempt, and beside him was a plastic bowl with a few crumbs of bread. He looked like a beggar. Their eyes met for a brief second, and Elena froze. She had expected fear or anger, but instead, the man gave a small nod, almost like a greeting. For some reason, her heart softened. She realized she wasn't the only one suffering. Little did she know, this man was not who he appeared to be. He was not a beggar. He was not poor. He was Victor the billionaire, who owned hotels, oil businesses, and transport companies. But at that moment, sitting in rags in an abandoned building, he was just another lonely soul. And Elena, without knowing, had just walked into the beginning of a story that would change both their lives forever. The night in Lagos carried a strange silence. Cars still moved along the distant highway, and somewhere in the market, a trader shouted about discounted tomatoes. But around the abandoned building, there was only the sound of insects and the occasional bark of a stray dog. Elena stood at the doorway, clutching her nylon bag tightly against her chest. She had not expected to see anyone inside. In her mind, she thought it would be empty, maybe a place to rest her head for a few hours before the cold night deepened. Instead, she found the man sitting in the shadows. At first, she wanted to walk away, but the truth was, she had nowhere else to go. And when their eyes met, something stopped her. The man's eyes were not like the eyes of a typical beggar. Yes, his clothes were torn, and his beard was unshaven, but his gaze was steady, clear, and almost proud. He nodded slightly, as though to say, "You are safe here." Elena stepped inside carefully. I just need a place to rest for the night," she said softly, almost apologizing. The man shrugged, moving a little to the side. "There's space. I don't own this place," he replied, his voice low but firm. She sat far from him at first, placing her bag under her head as a pillow. The floor was cold, and dust rose into her nose. She closed her eyes, but sleep did not come. She could feel the man's presence on the other side of the room. She wondered who he was, what brought him here, and whether he could be dangerous. Minutes stretched into hours, Finally, the man spoke again. "You're not from here," he said. Elena opened her eyes and looked at him. "Neither are you." He gave a faint smile. "True." Silence fell again. But something about his voice, it was not the voice of a man who had lived on the streets for long. There was depth, control, even a certain elegance to it. She wanted to ask more questions, but fear held her tongue. The next morning, Elena woke to the sound of traffic outside. She turned and saw the man still sitting, his back against the wall, his eyes fixed on the street beyond the broken window. He looked like someone carrying a heavy burden. She stood, brushed the dust from her skirt, and picked up her bag. "Thank you for letting me stay," she said quietly. He only nodded. For the next 2 nights, Elena found herself returning to the building. Each time the man was there. They barely spoke, but the silence between them slowly changed. It was no longer heavy with suspicion. It was softer, almost companionable. On the 3rd night, she noticed him shivering slightly. She hesitated, then pulled a small wrapper from her bag. It was old and thin, but better than nothing. She placed it near him. "Here, you can use this." He looked at her for a long moment, as if studying her heart. Then, without a word, he pulled the wrapper over his shoulders. That simple gesture marked the beginning of something neither of them expected. Days passed. Elena continued hawking sachet water, her feet blistered from walking long distances. Each night she returned, exhausted, to the abandoned building, and each night she found the man waiting. They began to exchange small words. "What's your name?" Elena asked one evening. He hesitated. "Joshua." She nodded. "I'm Eleanor." It was a lie, of course. His name was not Joshua. It was Victor Oba, one of the most powerful businessmen in Nigeria. But for now, he wanted to remain hidden. "Why are you here?" Elena asked carefully. Joshua Victor looked at the broken ceiling. "Sometimes a man needs to disappear to see what truly matters." His answer confused her, but she did not press. Everyone in Lagos carried secrets, she told herself. Maybe he was running from debt, maybe from the police, maybe from a broken heart. She did not know. What she did know was that she felt less alone with him there, and in her loneliness, that mattered more than answers. One evening, Elena returned with 2 pieces of akara she had bought with the little money she earned. Her stomach growled, but when she saw Joshua sitting quietly in the corner, she hesitated. Then she broke 1 akara in half and held it out to him. "Eat." He looked at her, surprised. "You need it more than I do." "I'll be fine. Just take it." Slowly, he reached out and took the food. Their fingers brushed for the first time, and in that small moment, an invisible thread connected them. But the city is never kind to those at the bottom. One night, as Elena walked back to the abandoned building, 3 young men stopped her. Their clothes sagged on their thin bodies, and their eyes gleamed with mischief. "Fine girl, where you dey go this night?" one of them asked, blocking her path. "I'm not looking for trouble," Elena said quickly, trying to step aside. But they surrounded her, laughing. One tried to snatch her bag. She struggled, holding tightly. Suddenly, a voice roared from behind. "Leave her alone!" It was Joshua. He charged at the boys with a surprising force, his tall frame moving swiftly. The boys, unprepared, scattered into the darkness. Elena stood frozen, her chest rising and falling in panic. Joshua turned to her. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "No, thank you." That night, she lay awake in the building, staring at the ceiling. Something had shifted inside her. This man, who seemed broken like her, had risked himself to protect her. And for the first time since losing everything, Elena felt a flicker of safety, a flicker of hope. That flicker would soon grow into a fire, because in saving her, Joshua had also awakened something in himself, a part of him that had been buried under wealth, power, and loneliness. But neither of them knew yet how far their bond would carry them, or how much it would be tested. The following days blurred into one another. For Elena, each day was the same. She rose early, tied her faded scarf, and walked barefooted to the market. She bought sachets of water, sometimes a cara, sometimes roasted plantain, and spent the day hawking. Her earnings were pitiful, but enough to keep her alive. At night, her tired legs carried her back to the abandoned building. And there, as though waiting for her, Joshua sat in his usual corner, calm, still, unreadable. For reasons she could not explain, that silent presence began to matter more than food itself. One evening, as the sun sank over Lagos, turning the skyline orange, Elena entered the building to find Joshua staring out of the broken window. He did not look up until she dropped her nylon bag beside her. "You're late," he said. "I had to walk farther than usual. People were not buying today." She sank to the floor, stretching her aching legs. Joshua studied her face, noticing the shadows under her eyes, the way her lips trembled from exhaustion. "You shouldn't overwork yourself," he said softly. Eleanor gave a tired laugh. "If I don't work, I don't eat. That's the rule of the street." Joshua looked at her for a long moment, then turned away. "You have strength, more than most I've met." Her heart tightened at his words. Compliments were rare in her world. For a moment, she wanted to ask about him, where he came from, why he was here, but fear of breaking the fragile connection held her back. It was on the 7th night that Joshua finally asked her the question she dreaded. "What happened to you, Elena?" She froze, her fingers clutching the nylon bag. No one had asked her that in weeks. The market women only saw her as another hawker, another struggling girl. But Joshua's eyes carried genuine curiosity and something like care. She swallowed hard. "I trusted the wrong person." Joshua tilted his head. "Who?" "My best friend," she said bitterly. "Her name was Clara. I thought she was like a sister. We opened a small shop together, shared everything. But one day she sold the shop behind my back. She took the money, paid off her debts, and vanished. I lost everything. Even the landlord threw me out, and now," she gestured around the dusty room, "this is all I have." Silence stretched between them. Then Joshua said quietly, "I'm sorry." Elena shrugged, though her eyes glistened. "Sorry does not change anything. On the streets, nobody cares about your story. You either survive or you don't." Joshua looked away, guilt washing over him. If only she knew who he truly was. If only she knew that he could, with a single phone call, restore her shop, her apartment, her dignity. But he remained silent. His test was not yet complete. The next night, Eleanor asked, "And you? What's your story?" Joshua stiffened. "Mine is not important." "It is," she insisted. "You live here, in this abandoned place, just like me. No one ends up here without a reason." Joshua exhaled slowly. He could not tell her the truth, not yet, but he could give her fragments. "I walked away," he said finally. "From what?" "From a life that no longer made sense. From people who only smiled because of what I could give them. From friends who were not really friends." Elena studied him, her heart beating faster. His words sounded so much like her own pain. She wanted to ask more, but his eyes haunted, guarded, told her he would not answer. So she let the silence stand. Their bond deepened in small ways. One evening, rain poured heavily. Elena entered, soaked to the skin, her clothes clinging to her body. She shivered as she sat down, wringing water from her wrapper. Without a word, Joshua removed the wrapper she had once given him and placed it over her shoulders. "You'll freeze," he said. She looked at him startled. "What about you?" "I'll be fine." Her chest tightened. She wanted to argue, but the warmth of the cloth and the gentleness in his voice silenced her. For the first time in months, she felt cared for. But with closeness came suspicion. One night, as they shared roasted corn, Eleanor asked, "Joshua, do you ever leave this building during the day?" "Sometimes." "Where do you go?" He hesitated. "I walk. I watch. I listen." "Listen to what?" "To people. To life. To see how they treat each other when they think no one is watching." Elena frowned. "That's strange." Joshua smiled faintly. "Perhaps, but you learn more about people when they don't know you're paying attention." Her suspicion grew. Who exactly was this man? He spoke like no beggar she had ever met. His voice carried authority, his words carried wisdom, and even the way he held himself upright, steady, disciplined, felt out of place here. But she said nothing. She was afraid that if she questioned too much, he might disappear. One night, Eleanor awoke to the sound of Joshua muttering in his sleep. "No, no, not like this," he whispered, his hands clenched into fists. She sat up, watching him twist on the floor, his face strained with pain. For a moment, she wanted to shake him awake, but instead, she reached out gently and placed her hand over his. Almost instantly, his body stilled, his breathing slowed. She withdrew her hand slowly, her heart racing. Who was this man? Haunted even in sleep. The days turned into weeks. Their connection deepened, though words were few. Elena found herself thinking of him while she hawked water. She worried if he had eaten, if he was safe while she was away. And when she returned each night, she felt relief wash over her when she saw him sitting there, waiting. One evening, as she sat beside him, watching the stars through the broken roof, she whispered, "Joshua, do you ever wonder if life could change, if we could start again?" He turned to her, his eyes unreadable. "Do you believe it's possible?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, even broken things can be mended." His chest tightened at her words. If only she knew that he held the power to change her life entirely. If only she knew that she was already mending something inside him, something wealth had never touched. But shadows of truth cannot remain hidden forever. Elena's kindness was chipping away at his disguise, and his heart warred between secrecy and confession. He wanted to tell her who he was. He wanted her to know that the world saw him as one of the richest men in Nigeria, not a beggar in an abandoned building. But fear held him back. The fear that once she knew, her kindness would change into something else. And Elena, too, was torn. She had begun to trust him, but in the back of her mind, Clara's betrayal still burned. Could she truly open her heart again? The answers would come sooner than either of them expected. Because life was about to throw them into a storm neither could ignore. The rains had ended, and Lagos buzzed with its usual madness buses honking, traders shouting, children weaving through traffic with trays of groundnuts. Elena wove through the chaos, balancing her sachets of water. Her feet ached, but her mind drifted to the abandoned building, to the strange man she now thought of as her only companion. That night, she returned to find Joshua Victor, sitting with a distant look, as though he carried the weight of the world. His eyes softened when he saw her. "You're late again," he said. "Business was good," she smiled faintly, though exhaustion showed in her eyes. "I sold everything today." He studied her, noticing how thin she'd become, how her hands trembled from overwork. Something inside him clenched. He had watched people flatter him for his billions. Yet Here was a woman giving everything without expecting a thing in return. But could her kindness survive the truth? Or would it vanish once she knew who he really was? Victor decided he needed to test her. The test came sooner than expected. A group of local thugs had been eyeing the abandoned building for weeks. To them, Joshua was just another beggar, easy to intimidate. That evening, as Elena and Joshua sat eating roasted plantain she had brought, 3 of them stormed inside. "Ah, see this place! Una day enjoy, Abby?" the leader sneered, kicking at Joshua's leg. Elena flinched, but Joshua remained calm, his eyes steady. "Leave us alone," he said firmly. The thug laughed. "Who you think you be? This our zone. If you want stay here, pay money." Joshua's jaw tightened. He could have crushed them easily. He had security men who would come at a single call. But he didn't move. He wanted to see something. He wanted to see what Elena would do. The thugs reached for Joshua's small bag of belongings. Without thinking, Elena jumped to her feet. "Stop!" she cried, stepping between them. Her voice shook, but her stance was firm. "Leave him. He has nothing to give you. Why do you trouble someone who is already suffering?" The thugs laughed at her bravery, but her eyes burned with defiance. "If you want to hurt him, you will go through me first," she said. Joshua's heart slammed in his chest. One of the thugs raised his hand to shove her, but Joshua stood quickly, his tall frame casting a shadow. His voice was low, commanding. "You've had your fun. Now go." Something in his tone sharp, authoritative, like a man used to being obeyed, made the thugs hesitate. They exchanged uneasy glances before spitting on the floor and leaving with curses. Elena's hands shook as she turned to Joshua. "Are you okay?" He stared at her, stunned. She stood for me. Me, a man she believes is nothing but a beggar. For the first time in years, Victor felt a crack in the wall around his heart. Later that night, as they sat in silence, Victor broke it with a whisper. "Why did you defend me?" Elena looked at him, confused. "Because you're my friend. Isn't that what friends do?" He swallowed hard. The word friend echoed in his mind. She did not care about his status, his wealth, or his power. She only cared about him as a man. And yet, he was still lying to her. The following week, Victor tested her again. He left a bundle of money notes he had discreetly withdrawn from a hidden account tucked inside his bag where she could easily find it. He wanted to see what she would do. That evening, as Elena returned and arranged her wrapper, her hand brushed against the bundle. She froze, pulling it out. Her eyes widened. "Joshua, what is this?" He looked at her calmly. "What do you mean?" "Money. A lot of it." "How? I thought you had nothing." Her voice trembled, suspicion flooding her eyes. Victor's chest tightened. This was the moment. If she reached for it, if greed shone in her face, he would know. But instead, Elena marched to him and pressed the money into his hands. "Keep it hidden. If people know you have this, they will kill you. Promise me you won't show anyone." Victor stared at her, speechless. "You're not even curious how I got it?" he asked slowly. Elena shook her head. "It's not my business. Whatever your secret is, I don't need to know. All I know is that we survive better together. That is enough." Tears stung his eyes, though he quickly looked away. For years, people had only cared about what he had, never about who he was. And here was a woman who didn't even want to know how he came by money. She only wanted him safe. The test was over, and Elena had passed. One night, as they sat under the moonlight leaking through the roof, Eleanor whispered, "Joshua, sometimes I think God sent you to me. When Clara betrayed me, I thought I would die of shame. But then I met you, and now I don't feel so alone." Joshua's throat ached. He wanted to tell her everything, that his name was Victor Harrington, that he owned towers across Lagos, that her kindness had restored his faith in humanity, but fear chained him. Not yet, he told himself. Not yet. What he didn't know was that fate was preparing to rip away his disguise sooner than he imagined. And when that truth came crashing down, Elena's world would once again be shattered. The days turned into weeks, and a strange rhythm formed between Elena and the man she still knew as Joshua. She would go out at dawn, selling her water to the impatient commuters and busy market women, and then return at night with roasted corn or plantain. Together they would eat, talk, and sometimes simply sit in silence, letting the hum of the city cradle them to sleep. But Joshua's world was not meant to stay hidden forever. Unknown to Elena, the city was buzzing with headlines. Victor Harrington, missing billionaire, philanthropist feared dead. His family, business partners, and government officials were restless. For weeks, search parties had scoured private hospitals, police stations, even mortuaries. His disappearance had shaken the nation's elite. Contracts stalled, stocks dipped, rumours swirled. Some said kidnappers were holding him for ransom. Others whispered that he had fled abroad under mysterious circumstances. But the truth was far stranger. Victor Harrington, billionaire magnate, was hiding in plain sight in a broken building, living as a beggar. And time was running out. It was a hot afternoon when the first crack appeared in Victor's disguise. Elena had gone to fetch water. Victor sat by the window, gazing out at the street. Suddenly, a convoy of sleek black SUVs rolled past, escorted by police bikes. His heart skipped. He knew those vehicles, his company's security detail. They were close, too close. That evening, Elena returned to find him pacing restlessly. "Joshua, what is it?" she asked. He forced a smile. "Nothing, just memories." But his unease didn't escape her. She tilted her head. "Sometimes you speak like a man who used to have everything. Your words, your posture, you are not like other beggars. Who are you, really?" Victor froze. Her eyes searched his face with a mixture of curiosity and fear. He opened his mouth to answer, but before he could, fate intervened. The discovery, 2 days later, it happened. Elena was hawking on the highway when she noticed a giant billboard. It bore the face of a man in a sharp navy blue suit, his jaw strong, his smile confident. The words underneath read, "Have you seen this man? Victor Harrington missing. Reward. Wu, Shu, Ling, Ling." Elena's breath caught. She dropped her tray, water sachets spilling onto the hot tar. The man on the billboard was Joshua, her Joshua, except he wasn't Joshua at all. That night, she stormed into the abandoned building, her face pale, her voice shaking. "Who are you?" she demanded. Victor looked up from where he sat. One glance at her trembling hands, and the fury in her eyes told him she knew. "Elena," he began. "No," she snapped. "Don't say my name like that. I saw it with my own eyes. The billboards, the news. You are not Joshua. You are Victor Harrington, the billionaire they are all searching for. And all this time, you let me believe you were nothing." Tears welled in her eyes, though she fought them. "Why? Why would a man like you live like this? Why would you lie to me?" Victor rose slowly, his tall frame casting a shadow across the dimly lit room. He looked at her, his voice low but steady. "Because I needed to know if anyone could see me for who I am, not for what I have. All my life, Elena, people have chased my wealth, my name, my power. But you gave me kindness when you thought I had nothing. For the first time in years, I felt human again." His words hung heavy in the air. But Eleanor's heart was torn. You tested me? Do you know what I have suffered, Joshua or Victor, or whoever you are? Do you know what it means to sleep hungry, to be betrayed by the one you trusted most? And now you tell me you were only hiding, watching me like some experiment? Her voice cracked. Do you even know what my kindness cost me? Victor's face crumpled. I know, and I will spend the rest of my life proving I am worthy of it. Eleanor turned away, her chest heaving. The man she had trusted, the man she thought God had sent to ease her loneliness, was not who he seemed. She felt small, foolish, betrayed. I don't want your riches, she whispered. I only wanted the truth. And with that, she walked out into the night, leaving Victor alone in the ruin of his lies. For the first time in years, the billionaire who had everything felt the sharp sting of losing the only thing that truly mattered, and he vowed silently he would not let her go, not like this. Elena did not sleep that night. She walked the streets with tears burning her eyes, replaying every moment she had shared with the man she thought was Joshua. His laughter, his gentleness, his gratitude for her kindness, it had all felt real. But now, knowing he was a billionaire, hiding under rags, she could no longer tell where the truth ended and the lies began. She sat on the edge of a broken pavement, hugging her knees as the night sounds of the city filled her ears. Cars honked in the distance, street vendors called out their last sales, and stray dogs barked at shadows. But all she could hear was his voice telling her she was the first person to make him feel human again. Part of her wanted to believe it. Another part whispered that he was only playing with her emotions. Victor, meanwhile, stayed in the abandoned building, staring at the cracked ceiling until dawn. For the first time, fear gripped him, not of losing his company or his wealth, but of losing Eleanor. He realized that her anger was justified. He had lied, even if his reasons were not cruel. He had hidden his truth, and in doing so, he had hurt her. The next morning, Elena tried to go about her usual routine, but the world felt heavier. She carried her tray of water into the streets, but her voice lacked its usual energy. Some customers noticed. "Girl, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost," one woman remarked. Elena forced a smile, but inside she felt hollow. By noon, her mind was made up. She had to confront him again, not as the beggar she cared for, but as the man he truly was. She returned to the building, and sure enough, he was there, waiting. His eyes were tired, but the moment he saw her, they softened. "Elena," he whispered, stepping forward. "Don't," she said firmly, holding up a hand. "I don't even know what to call you anymore. Joshua? Victor? Which one is real?" He looked down, ashamed. "Both," he answered quietly. "Joshua was who I became when I wanted to disappear. Victor is who the world knows, but the man who sat with you, who ate from your tray, who felt alive again because of you, that man was real. He was me." Elena's lips trembled, but her anger was still burning. "You don't understand what you did. I shared my last piece of bread with you, thinking we were the same two broken people in a cruel world. Do you know what it feels like to give when you have nothing? And all along, you could have bought the whole street 10 times over. Do you know how humiliating that feels?" Victor's voice cracked. "I do not take your kindness lightly. I will never forget it. And I swear, Elena, I was not mocking you. I was desperate to know if anyone could see my heart, not just my money. You did. That is why you matter more to me than anything else I own." She turned away, tears streaming down her cheeks. His words touched her, but the wound was still fresh. Trust, once broken, did not heal. overnight. The days that followed were filled with distance. Elena kept working, but she avoided the abandoned building. She told herself she was finished with him. Yet every time she sold water, every time she passed a billboard with his face on it, her heart ached. She missed him. She hated that she missed him. Victor, on the other hand, could no longer hide. His family's search had intensified. Reporters filled the streets, and security convoys combed the city. One evening, as he left the building to follow Elena from afar, 2 men in suits spotted him. Their eyes widened. "Sir, Mr. Harrington!" one of them exclaimed, rushing forward. Victor froze, caught at last. Within hours, the entire nation was buzzing with the news. The missing billionaire had been found, living in the streets of Lagos, disguised as a beggar. The revelation shook the country. Newspapers speculated endlessly about why a man of such wealth would abandon everything. Some said it was madness, others said it was a publicity stunt. Only a handful understood the truth. For Elena, the news was unbearable. Crowds now followed him wherever he went, bodyguards surrounded him, and his name was back on every headline. He belonged to a world of glass towers and power, while she was still a poor water seller. The distance between them now felt like a mountain too high to climb. And yet, even as the cameras flashed and the world demanded answers, Victor's eyes kept searching for her in the crowd. The one woman who had seen him without his crown of wealth. The one woman who had loved Joshua without knowing he was Victor. He had been found by the world, but he feared he had lost the only person who truly found his heart. The city roared with the news of Victor Harrington's return. Journalists camped outside his mansion, television stations ran endless coverage, and his company's stock soared overnight. But for Victor, none of it mattered. He sat in the back of his armoured car, surrounded by guards and flashing cameras, and all he could think about was Elena, the girl who had fed him when he was starving, who had spoken to him like he was human, who now avoided him as though he were a stranger. For days he tried to reach her. He sent his men to the markets where she worked, but each time she slipped away before they arrived. He went himself once, stepping out of his car in plain clothes, but the moment she saw him, she turned and walked off, her heart too heavy to face him. Eleanor felt torn. Each time she saw his face on the billboards or television, she felt the sting of betrayal all over again. Yet deep inside, she remembered the man she had called Joshua, the man who laughed with her in the dark, who listened to her stories without judgment, who shared her roasted corn as though it were a feast. She missed him, but she feared him too. Could she ever fit into his world? Could she trust a man who had hidden such a secret from her? One evening, as she sat by the roadside with her tray nearly empty, a long shadow fell across her. She looked up, and her heart skipped. Victor was there. No guards, no cameras, just him. He held no suit, no polished shoes, only a simple shirt and worn trousers, almost like the Joshua she once knew. "Elena," he said softly, his voice trembling. She stood quickly, ready to walk away, but he stepped in front of her, his eyes desperate. "Please, just listen to me once. If after this you never want to see me again, I will respect it." Her hands tightened on the tray. "What else is there to say? You lied to me. You used me." He shook his head, his eyes glistening. "I never used you. I needed to find one person in this world who would care for me when I had nothing. And you, Elena, you were that person. Do you think I can forget the day you split your last meal with me? Do you think I can forget the kindness in your eyes when the rest of the world walked past me as if I didn't exist? You gave me back my faith in people. You gave me back my life." Tears welled in her eyes, though she tried to blink them away. "But you belong to a world I will never know, Victor. You are a man of power, of riches, I am just a poor water seller who sleeps under the sky. How can a man like you love a woman like me?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice until it was almost a whisper. "Because it was in the streets, not in my mansion, that I found my heart again. And it belongs to you. I do not care about the money, the suits, the cars. None of it matters if I do not have you by my side." Eleanor's chest rose and fell as his words broke through the walls she had built. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to reach out, to touch the face that once smiled at her in the darkness. But fear still clung to her. Seeing her silence, Victor slowly knelt before her in the dust of the roadside, not caring who watched. Passersby stopped, stunned, as the billionaire everyone admired lowered himself at the feet of a poor hawker. His voice shook as he said, "Elena, I do not come as Victor Harrington the billionaire. I come as Joshua, the man who was hungry, the man who found love in your kindness. Give me a chance, not to repay you with wealth, but to love you as you deserve." Elena covered her mouth with trembling hands. The sight of him on his knees, vulnerable and sincere, broke her last defense. She dropped the tray, water sachets scattering, and fell to her knees before him. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "I don't want your money. I only wanted the truth." "And now you have it," he whispered back, pulling her into his arms. The crowd around them erupted in cheers and applause, phones flashing as the sight of billionaire Victor Harrington embracing a poor street seller spread across the city like wildfire. But for Elena and Victor, the world disappeared. For the first time since the lie was revealed, they held each other not as beggar and water seller, not as billionaire and pauper, but as two souls who had found home in each other. In the weeks that followed, Victor did not whisk Elena away to mansions or dress her in jewels. Instead, he spent his days at her side, helping her sell water, laughing with her in the sun, proving that his love was not built on wealth, but on the bond they had forged in the shadows of hardship. Slowly, her heart healed. Slowly, she learned to trust again. And when he finally asked her to walk into his world with him, she did not go as a poor girl rescued by a rich man, but as the woman who had taught him the true meaning of love. Elena and Victor's story became legend in the city, not because of the money he owned, but because a girl with nothing had given everything, and in return gained a love greater than riches.